I'm here with Dr. Matthew Meyer, who is an NCI alumnus and is currently a senior director of the Discovery Pharmacology Group at Bristol Myers Squibb. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Meyer.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's always great to hear from colleagues and friends and individuals who are at the NCI and keeping those connections. So it's really a pleasure to have this opportunity.
Great. So what I would like to do today is to get your insights in pharma industry careers. And as you know, I'm talking to you on behalf of postdocs and graduate students all across the country and the world who are currently exploring opportunities in R&D space of the pharma industry. So what I would like to do is to start this with asking you, could you please share a little bit about your current responsibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm currently at Bristol Myers Squibb, and I'm leading. I see my role as almost being threefold. The primary responsibility is, as you mentioned, building and leading a discovery pharmacology and vivo biology group in the Mechanisms of Cancer Resistance Thematic Research Center in Cambridge. And so, in that role, it's a brand new site in Cambridge. So, in that role, we are quite literally building this team up from scratch. And so it's been a tremendous amount of fun looking for individuals to bring into the group and building our group's capabilities to enable drug discovery from really from target identification all the way up to development of translational strategies to enable that successful proof of concept in phase 1, phase 1B, phase 2 trials. And so that makes up a considerable portion of what I do on a daily basis. It's growing and mentoring that group. The second role that I have at the site in Cambridge is sitting on the leadership team and the governance board for the Mechanisms of Cancer Resistance (TREC). And in that role, what I do with my colleagues on that team is really to shepherd the portfolio along, so help enable teams to generate data, to make recommendations, and then make decisions on specific programs, specific targets that ultimately will help, again, move programs, the most compelling programs, forward, hopefully into successful first-in-human trials. So that's the second role, and the third role is separate from both of the two prior, but still connected, and that is being involved with business development, looking into business development opportunities. So identifying opportunities to leverage external innovation. So both small companies and large companies, when they have assets or ideas that they're interested in partnering with Bristol Myers Squibb on, I have the opportunity to sit on those teams, review the data, interact with those teams on the other side, in today's world, on the other side of the camera, but in more normal times, on the other side of the table, and look for, try to get a sense of how those external opportunities and that external innovation would fit within the Bristol Myers Squibb portfolio.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like you're doing both the translational work as well as doing business development for BMS, which is like really cool.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
really this in vivo side of in vivo biology side of the drug discovery process, if you will, really does have the opportunity to be intimately involved all the way from, as you said, from the very initial identification and validation of targets, working with colleagues who own that process all the way up to through the drug discovery process, and of course all the way up to the translational piece.
Awesome. Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the work environment at BMS? Like, what do you like about it? It
Yeah,
sounds like you're doing a lot of different things. So if you can share a little bit of details,
yeah,
how the work environment is.
yeah, absolutely. So I think it's probably fair. This is my second industry job, and both have been similar in the sense that um, science really is a team sport, and in certainly in the two industry examples that I've experienced, and absolutely the case at Bristol Myers Squibb. And so you have this opportunity where you sit on a team. You have this group of individuals who are bringing to solve this problem, this health problem or this disease, individuals with quite varied expertise. Everyone comes together as peers around a table, quite literally, again, behind cameras these days, or in front of cameras these days. But you have this opportunity to interact with and work with individuals who, um, once again, are experts in their field, but it's an area of science or biology or manufacturing in some cases that is in many ways new to you, and it gives this wonderful opportunity, one, to learn, of course, learn from these other experts. But what's most exciting to me and what I most enjoy is seeing how all of these distinct sets of ideas and these distinct expertise again come together in a laser like focus to solve for these health problems. And it really is this team environment is not only of course required for us to be successful, it's also very much expected. So it's a this ability to effectively communicate on a project team and work collaboratively with your colleagues is critical, and again it really is expected, and it can be immensely rewarding.
Okay, awesome. So my next question for you was that I know, and you hinted to this, that you have worked in two different pharma industries. So I wanted to ask you that how did you get into industry? Like, how did the postdoc at NIH help you get the industry job?
Yeah,
Or did you always want to work in industry?
yeah, excellent question. So I had an experience during my undergraduate, between my junior and senior year, to do an internship at Eli Lilly Elanco in Indianapolis, and prior to spending a summer, it was a very short summer, but it had really striking effects on what I ultimately wanted to do. Um, and what I was exposed to for the very first time was this idea of team science and bringing together individuals who, you have medicinal chemists who are, have postdocs and sometimes decades of experience synthesizing compounds, and you're quite literally working hand in hand with those individuals. You're bringing the very basic biology to the table, and again, everyone coming together to solve for these problems. And that concept of truly collaborative team science was completely new to me. And I left that summer thinking, okay, I think this is probably what I want to do. Um, and I had that, in the back of my mind even through my PhD at Cornell. And then when I went to the NIH, I started working was in Barbara Vonderhaar's lab in Building 37. It was right after that building was renovated, so I was quite fortunate in one, not having to be involved with the move, but instead walk right in and claim a bench and a spot. So it's a wonderful building, lots of great memories. And so certainly we had activities going on in Barbara's lab and that broader group that she was the head of. Um, I had, of course, the activities that were very central to my daily work. But in the end, what ended up happening is that ended up being probably 50 to 60% of what I was doing on a daily basis. And it was that opportunity once again to not only reach across the lab and start interacting with someone who knows a technique or has an animal model or has technology that I didn't have or wasn't immediately within our group, and start thinking about ways of using those capabilities, those animal models, that unique biology to come up with a new idea and to solve a new problem. And so it was in some ways a kind of a mini team-based science once again that I first experienced at Eli Lilly, and very much reinforced this idea of getting to a spot or a profession or an organization where you truly have this ability to synergize. I think is probably an appropriate word with colleagues who have expertise that enable your expertise and your capabilities to be even more valuable because you're working with someone who brings to bear another set of expertise.
Awesome. So what I understand, uh, from what you've explained is that it's the team science that attracted you to industry, and that's what you really love right now in your current role and in your past role in industry. So my
Yeah,
next question related to that
yeah,
um, was that what are some of the challenges of working
yeah.
in industry?
Yeah, great. So I'll quickly go back to kind of the other thing that I like about industry, and then we can go to the challenges, because with
Sure.
any with any career there are going to be challenges. I think the other important, this has certainly been my experience at Novartis, and currently at BMS as well, is this commitment to basic biology, and really using an understanding of basic biology and disease biology to serve as a platform or a foundation on which everything else is done. And it's that commitment to basic biology, and again using science to drive decisions that is critically important for me. And I've been lucky to have worked in organizations, including at Bristol Myers Squibb, that values that understanding of basic biology. So the challenges, I think, as I mentioned, every job has challenges. I think one of the challenges that we're faced with every day is um, this challenge of in some ways an embarrassment of riches, and not monetarily, but rather there are always many things that we can do. There's never a shortage of ideas that one can pursue, and so um, coming up with a way that enables you to look across this vast expanse of potential opportunities, potential targets to develop a drug around, or a set of assays to identify new targets to pursue. Um, you can never do everything. One of the great things
Right.
about industry is that it's you have the ability to do a lot of things, and a lot of things in parallel, but you can never do everything. And so coming up with ways that enable you to make the right decision, to prioritize target A over target B, um, perhaps because there's a very clear patient population, or perhaps because based on all of your preclinical data, you think the opportunity to bring really meaningful clinical benefit is quite tangible. Um, but this is a challenge, I think, that all of us have, even as a postdoc, right? You're always trying to
Right.
figure out, where should I focus my efforts, and so that challenge exists within industry, of course. But actually, that's also part of the fun. If everything was easy, then I
Right.
think we would all probably get bored. Um,
Exactly.
and so that's absolutely a challenge. And
Yeah.
then the other part of it, and I would, again, it's not a challenge as a negative, but it's part of what we do, and that is um, helping to influence. And when you're working on a team, it isn't one person coming in and say, okay, this is what we're doing today. It is coming in and saying, all right, this is why I think we should be pursuing this target, or this is why I think these sets of scientific questions should be pursued or prioritized over these. And this gets back to that need to be able to communicate and collaborate, and influence, and most importantly, also to be influenced, to hear the perspective of others, and allow that to shape your mind, and shape how you see the world.
Okay, great. So my next question for you is that so when you're hiring candidates for in your team or at BMS, so generally most of the PhDs, postdocs have great technical skills. So
Yeah.
other than the technical skills, what type of skills do you generally look for in a candidate?
Yeah, a great question. So typically, when we're hiring, and this is certainly the case, we've been hiring quite a lot over the past 18 months or 14 months. Um, we oftentimes go in, actually, almost always go in knowing that there is either a technical skill that we're looking for, or more often than not, an area of biology where an individual um, clearly has built up a reputation around it, and that reputation is demonstrated by publications most frequently, and of course their ability to communicate that knowledge in an interview setting. And so you go into the process thinking, all right, I need someone who does pooled in vivo CRISPR screens, and that helps you, of course, do that initial narrowing of the field. Um, and of course, a lot of what you're looking for, again, is having uh, allowing this candidate to try to demonstrate their command of this area of expertise. Um, and so that's perhaps the most obvious, because again we tend to be bringing into people who are trying to help us solve a specific problem.
Cool.
Um, the,
So
the
that
other
will be the technical skill, right?
That's
Uh,
exactly right.
yeah.
Yeah. So the other side of the equation, which is equally important, is um, going back to what we talked about very early on, and it's this need to have individuals who can come into an organization, and their default way of thinking is to think collaboratively, to to use, again, not to see their knowledge and their expertise as the only way, but rather to leverage their knowledge and expertise, um, to share it with this group of individuals who will be sitting on a team with them, bringing their own knowledge and expertise, and having that ability to communicate very effectively, um, to be influenced, to hear, listen to reason, and to be influenced, but also to be able to influence. Again, it goes back to some of these soft skills, and some demonstration of having been able to um, served as a leader as a postdoc in driving a project or a concept forward, where they didn't do it all within the confines of their lab, but rather they went out and worked with other individuals and brought them in to get them excited and to share in this experience of solving a problem.
Yeah, that's awesome suggestion. Um, so my last question for you is, do you have any other advice for people who want to be successful in industry?
Yeah.
Anything that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I would say the one thing, and I think it's probably true for every career, maybe two things. One is always seek out people who are smarter than you,
Right.
both people who can serve as mentors, but also people who you end up hiring, uh, because quite literally, as we all know, science evolves very, very rapidly, and having around you individuals who are constantly challenging you, and more importantly, not more importantly, equally importantly, um, you being open to these challenges and constantly learning. And again, I think this is the case for any career, but um, always be ready to learn and always be open to suggestions. Be willing to uh, stand up and defend what you believe in based on your understanding of the biology, for example. Um, but at the same time, make sure you're able to hear other people's perspective, and again, be ready to learn. It's critically important. And I think about my own path, if you will, all the way from undergraduate to even today, where I'm growing a good sized group. Um, Look for those opportunities to be challenged and uh, keep yourself on the steep part of the learning curve. I think, at least for me, um, once you begin to kind of level off from that learning perspective, some of the fire is gone, for me anyway. And so, being willing to constantly learn, being willing to be challenged, surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, and always learn. It really is, I think, the key to being successful, and importantly, really enjoying what you do.
Yeah, great advice. Thank you so much for your time today. Where can people find you? Is LinkedIn a good place to connect with you if someone wants to get in touch with you?
Yes, indeed. I don't post a lot on LinkedIn unless I have positions, I tend to be quite active because I've got a lot of friends and colleagues out there, yeah, it's a very effective tool to reach out. Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you once again. You have a wonderful day. It was nice
Thank
talking
you.
to you.
You as
Awesome.
well. It's a pleasure. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.